Can I get my charging cord when you get?
Not on mute.
You've got a hot mic.
Thank you. Thank you. I need to move my screen. I can't see who's here. Okay. Good evening. This is the February 4th Community Planning and Economics Development Committee meeting. I am Mayor Sherry Cantor. I would like to welcome you to tonight's meeting. We are following the in-person attendance, the exception to the in-person attendance of public meetings because of transmission risk of COVID-19. This is being conducted in the same style that we have been doing in accordance with Governor Lamont's public health emergency and civil preparedness orders. And I just want to do a roll call of people, counselors that are here, and then we can make sure that we recognize all the staff members that are also here. I see Deputy Mayor Leon Davidoff is here. I see for this committee, Beth Kerrigan, Councilor Kerrigan is here, correct, Beth? I see your name. Yeah?
Yes, it sounds like Romper Room.
So,
that might be, you may not remember Romper Room. I remember Romper
I
Room.
do. I'm with you. And I see Lee Gold. So the committee members are Minority Leader Lee Gold and Beth Kerrigan and myself. And again, I see Deputy Mayor here. Anybody, any other counselors that are present that I did not? Okay. And then we have quite a bit of staff, but I guess we will just make sure that you talk through me so that we do have order. So through the chair and state your name and your title so people can follow if they are attending this meeting. So first we will, I don't think do we need to approve the minutes, Gina? Could you approve the minutes of February 10th, 2020? That was a very long time ago, a whole world ago. So I vaguely remember that meeting, but without any objection, the minutes are approved. Any objection? Okay. We actually do approve the minutes of the council meeting, so I don't think that is actually something that we have to do procedurally. But right, okay, Mr. Hart, I will go to you. Item 2B, update on North Main Street Road Diet Study. Mr. Hart.
Thank you, Mayor. Matt Hart, Town Manager. Good evening, everyone. Glad to have you on the call at our virtual meeting this evening. As the council is well aware, the road diet study is well underway. It's a project that we're very excited about, and as part of the scope of work for our consulting team from VHP, they need to periodically, provide presentations, and we want to have a chance to update the council on where the project stands. So tonight we have with us Joe Balskas. Joe, am I pronouncing your name correctly, from VHP? But Mayor, before we turn to Joe, Dwayne Martin, Town Engineer, might have some introductory comments as well.
Thank you. We'll go to Dwayne. Thank you so much, Mr. Hart. Dwayne Martin, Town Engineer.
Thank you, Matt. Madam Mayor, members of the Town Council, and others. Yeah, we are very excited to present to you our the status of the North Main Street Road Diet. I just wanted to point out we did not start from scratch. There was a study that was done already, and that information was not lost. We used that to build off of. The previous study was done well, but there were still a lot of questions that were left unanswered, in my opinion. And so this is a continuation of that, building up. One of the pieces that you're going to see tonight was not in the original scope from that study, which was concept plans. What is the road diet going to look like? And so our consultant VHP has been working closely with town staff building up to this. And it was important to have this item in the scope to present to you before we go to the public and present this. Wanted to make sure that everybody understood what was coming. And so Joe Balskas from VHB is the project manager for us on this. And he's going to go through a PowerPoint presentation, give an update as to where we stand on it, and also display those concept plans. And we have plenty of time to answer any questions that you have. So without further ado, I'll hand it off to Joe Balskas through you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Over to you, Mr. Balskus.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I've been using so many different conference call mediums here, so let me make sure I get this right. I'm going to share this screen. You should be able to see my PowerPoint screen, right?
Mine lags a little bit, so if someone else could say yes, that would be helpful. I don't see it yet.
Looks
see it.
good.
It's great.
I got
Now I have it. Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. So, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everyone, Commission, and Dwayne and team as well. A brief presentation here, about 10 minutes or so, to run through the slides of where we are with the current project. And just real quick about VHP, and we're locally in Weathersfield, about 50 people in Weathersfield. About myself, just real quick, I'm a lifetime Hartford area native. I have about 32 years of experience in transportation in the capital region, doing road diets, traffic signals, roundabouts, traffic calming. I'm also secretary of the Connecticut Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Board, so I have pretty good understanding of the bike and ped environment and vulnerable users. And I'm also an adjunct professor. So Dwayne mentioned phase one. That was done about 4 years ago, and that was relegated to just North Main Street, which is highlighted here in blue, as you can see here. And with the phase two study that we're doing, we've expanded that tremendously. We looked at the previous study and looked at what else should we look at in terms of adjacent intersections, and we expanded it basically east and westward to Tropic Drive, as you see here, and Mountain Road. We also looked at the Park Road interchange. So we have about over 20 intersections that we're actually studying as part of the phase two effort. As part of the effort, just real quick on the scope of work, we obviously did some data collection that we always do for these types of studies. And obviously we started this during the pandemic, during last year. However, we required a lot of data from both the town, that the town has done with various studies, the town's own traffic counts, as well as the Connecticut DOT had a lot of data going back several years at numerous intersections in the study area. And we also did some traffic counts, some isolated traffic count locations, to mostly just figure out where the distribution of traffic was going from our older data. And we also we did a crash review of these intersections. And from all that, we developed a capacity analysis, and we looked at the phase one, how the phase one analyze the intersections, and then how we're analyzing the intersections. We looked at how the diversion of traffic volumes would result from the road diet. And we did basically a summary. And we're in the middle of doing all that right now, all that analysis. But we know so far where we are, that based on the data collection, the analysis, that it looks like the road diet can be managed with the signal timing and some phasing and some minor equipment changes at these intersections. And I'll go through what those are. But it looks like it's worthy of going to the road diet trial. And that's our recommendation, is to do that. So in order to do that, we have a couple things we want to talk about. Obviously, in North Main Street, we want to implement the road diet, which involves the twiddle, as we call it, a two-way left turn lane. I think actually you spelled that there, actually. Two-way left turn lane from Loomis to Haynes, and I'll talk about that. Restricting left turns at Loomis, I want to talk about that as well. But also adding left turn lanes, exclusive left turn lanes at Fern Street and Salem Avenue intersection with some signal equipment to better accommodate the traffic there, the turning traffic. And on Tropic Drive, looking at optimizing the traffic signal system by doing timing and phasing cycle length changes to the signals to accommodate the diverted traffic. Nothing really on Mountain Road needed from what we see so far. But the biggest part of this also is monitoring during the road diet implementation to do extensive data collection, additional traffic counts, look at the queues, look at the speeds, and observe traffic patterns, but monitor that during the implementation. This is just a very basic cross section of North Main Street. It basically shows the 4 lanes, as we all know, that are out there. And they're narrow lanes. There's no real shoulders for the most part. And so it's basically 4 lanes with sidewalks and curb. And what's proposed, and this was in phase 1, and we're obviously keeping in concept with the idea of phase 1, the alternatives recommended, and doing a 2-way left turn lane, as I said, for the median, and then pushing the through lanes to the outside. So we have 2 through lanes now instead of 4 through lanes. We have a middle median lane, if you will, you call it that, a 2-way left turn lane. Then that gives us a ability to have shoulders, paved shoulders on the outside. And this is all accomplished within the curb line of North Main Street. We're not changing any curb lines here. No physical improvements to the roadway itself. This is all involving restriping the roadway to allow for 2 lanes, 1 through lane in each direction, with a two-way left turn lane for your median, and then having a minimum 4-foot shoulder. It goes to 5 feet in some locations, but from the dimension of the roadway that we have, it's a minimum 4-foot wide paved shoulder on each side. So what does that all mean? So we then took those analysis and the ideas that we have and the concept and put it to paper and using the base mapping. And I wanna walk you through. I'm gonna exit the presentation and I'm gonna go into our actual maps that Dwayne was talking about. Can you see the map here?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So this is our concept plan, and it's using the MDC and town's base mapping, and it shows existing kind of faded, and what you see in heavy black lines here is the proposed. That's proposed for the road diet. And going through the road diet, it's not as simple as just saying, Joe, take out 4 lanes, put in 2 lanes, put a twiddle in, as we call it, left turn lane, and then put signs up and you're done. It's a little more involved with that, where you're talking about having to start the road diet. How do you start it? How do you end it? So coming from the Farmington Avenue intersection from the town center, we want to go and we want to look at where can we go from 2 lanes to 1 lane. We felt this is a good location to do it. And this is a concept, we maybe change this a little bit more, but basically looking at once you go past Brace Road, you're going to then start merging from 2 lanes to 1 lane as you go across Loomis Drive, and then you're into your single northbound lane going northbound. And so this shows this is some engineering detail, but I want to just show you what we're talking about. You can see how it's changing to 4 lanes to 3 lanes. But the more important part of this here is that we felt that at Loomis Drive, there's a concern for the left turns that are there today. We know there's an issue now trying to turn out and during the peak hours, Loomis Drive South, this is. So with the provision of the road diet trial, trying to identify where we can address some issues that we may see, and with a taper happening when you're coming from, and I'll try and show you my cursor here, when you're coming up from Farmington Avenue and you're 2 lanes, that we know Brace Road is more times than not sometimes a de facto left turn lane, we call it. People are always trying to turn left here. So you're in your right through lane here. So we think that's the majority of your traffic. Therefore, we felt that, look at this, make this a right turn only during the road diet trial. Right turn only, disallow left turns out of here. They can turn at the next intersection. I'll show you that. That way, it cleans this up, this 2-lane merge of traffic through the intersection, still allows left turns into Loomis Drive, but it eliminates that potential conflict that we see will be happening with the new merge happening there. So that's one of the more important aspects of the project we identified we should look at and propose that. And then I'm basically going to walk you along the corridor. We have a whole linear plan here, so I'm going to walk you along the corridor and not talk about every detail, but just point out for you, like in this location here, we have 2 4-foot shoulders. If I can zoom in there a little bit without causing too much pain. We have a 12-foot twiddle, as I'm calling it, 2-way left turn lane, and then 10-foot through lanes. This is 12 feet because this is the minimum. DOT has it at 4 feet in other locations. We are allowed to go to minimum 12 feet. Other municipalities may have tried 10 feet, but this for the trial, we are saying do this as 12 feet. So basically along the corridor, as you go from Loomis South, as we're calling Loomis Drive, and you go up past Whitman Avenue, we have signs that we've put in place to identify the center lane, left turn only. And then when you get to Loomis up here, and give it a second, it'll catch up as I go through here. It's a large file. By the cemetery, you can turn left out of Loomis. So we're not changing anything at Loomis. So those left turners that we're trying to restrict at the Loomis South, we're saying come around Loomis Drive to the north and turn left there. You're only crossing 2 lanes here. I guess 3 lanes you could say, but 2 lanes here. And it's a much easier crossing maneuver versus going across taper and merging traffic. So this is pretty much what you have throughout the corridor. As we go through the corridor here, there's Keeney Street. We have the signs themselves, the markings. You see the existing lane lines and center line. That's all changed, obviously, with these markings. Then you get to Fern Street. Then at Fern Street, we're making some changes at Fern Street. We are now providing exclusive left turn lanes with the road diet, which makes sense, and have exclusive left turn lanes on northbound and southbound. We're then going to modify the intersection a little bit, and again, not physical, just paved markings, no curving. And we are going to add another signal head on the mast arm here to allow these left turns to go together. Today they can't, to go together with our revised traffic signal phasing. So that's one change we're recommending for the road diet trial. We're also going to add some signs, new traffic pattern, North Main Street ahead, so people are aware of that. We'll have portable message signs out there as well in the weeks before and during that will have a new traffic pattern for going from 4 lanes to 2 lanes. And then it just continues just going up through the whole mile-and-a-half corridor, Hilltop Drive as well, and just delineating the markings, you know, through Leonard Road. Same thing, we'll change there. So each intersection, you'll have your own turn lane. You'll be able to turn into the intersection out of the through traffic as you're going through the project areas. And I'll just keep going here. It's going a little slow because of the graphics. And we're still at this location, still at 4-foot shoulder here as well. There are locations, again, where it's 5 feet. We'll go past Brookside Boulevard as well. And I'll just keep going through here. This is the same type of markings throughout the corridor that you were expecting with the phase 1 study. Same thing here. In this location here at Hickory Lane, the pavement's wider. So we have 5-foot shoulders here. So in this area here, the shoulders go from 4 foot to 5 foot. Probably not going to notice that driving, maybe on a bike. If you were to have a bike in there, you might notice it. Or if you're walking along the sidewalk, you might notice it a while. But you're not necessarily going to notice a much, you know, a 1 foot increase in the shoulder, in the paved shoulder. So coming across Craigmore Road again, then we get to Asylum Avenue. And here, again, left turn lanes being proposed here, exclusive left turn lanes. The twiddle, the 2-way left turn lane, ends. You have a sign saying it ends here, and then that becomes the left turn lane for the intersection for both directions. And again, we're going to add a signal head on this mast arm to allow those left turns with the arrows, and we're going to modify the signal phasing and time in this intersection as well to accommodate those left turns. And then I'll just keep going real quick. There's some locations where we've modified the markings a little bit, and this location didn't need to have a 2-way left turn lane here. We put an island in here, didn't need it there. And as you keep going up through the north end of the project, this is now where we're terminating we're beginning it and ending it up at Sims Road intersection. So the analysis shows that we tried to bring it through Sims Road, but the analysis of Sims Road doesn't allow us to have a single through lane here, a left turn lane. We need 2 lanes of storage there. So that's why Sims Road is unchanged. However, it's starting just past Sims Road and Pioneer Drive, similar to Brace Road and Loomis Drive intersection to the south. And then here we're going to open it up just before Haynes Road from a single lane past Lawler Road to 2 lanes. So that could be a left turn, as is today, for Pioneer Drive, or a through lane extended up to Sims Road. And then again, we'll have signs saying new traffic pattern ahead for motorists to see as they are traversing the roadway in both directions. So that's in a nutshell. That's the entire project I just showed you slowly, and we'll make this available to everyone that needs to see it. But that's a good snapshot, if you will, the concept that we have for the project. And back to the presentation, if this works. I'm sorry. So in the presentation, I actually had each one of these in the presentation, but I was able to show it to you in a roll plan that you can have. So in conclusion, our next steps. Our next steps are finalize the concept plans. Hold the public information meeting that we were planning for. We're going to have that. After that meeting, we're going to finalize the plan, finalize it into a construction plan, and then go to implementation. And we're suggesting a minimum of 6 months that we think is necessary, especially if we start in the summertime, depending on the bridge construction schedule, that we want to carry through into the fall. Maybe things are back to semi-normal at that point in time, but regardless, things will settle down in 6 months with traffic patterns, ongoing monitoring that and analysis. And then when in the middle of all that and the end of that, we are going to then develop conclusions and recommendations as the consultants of the town to advise the town that this is working, this is not working, this can work with these issues, with these things resolved. We found these issues during the monitoring. Here are the recommendations from the consultant team for the town to go forward with keeping the road diet trial in place, or it's not working, recommend you go back to the 4 lanes. And with that, I'll take any questions. I'll go to the presentation, whatever the committee decides they would like to have. You do.
Thank you, Mr. Belskus. Are there questions? I think we should go to the committee members and see if there are questions on the presentation that you just did. This has been, and Lee is relatively new to this, but this has been something, maybe Matt, maybe you can take a couple minutes and just give a quick background on the project and just sort of just a couple minutes of history and.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Matt Hart, Town Manager, and actually Mr. Martin may be better suited for that, but I'll start. As we talked about at the beginning of the presentation, I think 4 years ago, approximately 4, maybe 5 years ago, the town had commissioned a study through the Capital Region Council of Governments. And, we thought that before proceeding to the trial, staff's recommendation was to conduct further analysis, and that's the project in front of you now. We talked, I think we presented this concept to the former iteration of this committee, which was the Community Planning Committee in the last council term. And we talked about the timeline and how it was important to synchronize this roughly on the heels of the bridge project. And we've made some modifications to that, but it is still largely, we're still largely operating within that context. So again, as a staff, we're excited about this initiative. We think VHP brings a lot to the table, and we're looking forward to a good trial.
Okay, well, maybe we will, thank you, Matt. Maybe we'll go to questions now. I know Ms. Kerrigan has a question, and then if there's anything further that Mr. Martin would like to add, well, feel free. Okay, Ms. Kerrigan. Ms. Kerrigan?
I was talking to myself.
I kind of figured that might be the case. Okay, go ahead.
What was I saying? I think I said through you, Madam Mayor. With respect to the island, is that a physical island or a painted island? And the reason that I ask is I live off Farmington, and those physical islands have been somewhat problematic with respect to either accidents or plow. So that's one question, and then I'll just throw my other one out there. And I got to say, Mary Ellen Thibodeau, who was a huge fan of the road diet, huge biker. Huge biker. It's sad that she has passed away and not able to be here for this presentation, because I know she would have really appreciated it. The 4-foot wide area, is that intended for bicycles or parking, or what's the plan for that? And thanks again, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Kerrigan. Both questions that I had as well. And we'll talk, Matt and I will talk a little bit about Mary Ellen and the thoughts that are also in this. So we will go, I think, through you, Mr. Velazquez, I guess, and then Mr. Martin.
Yeah. So as I said, there's no physical curbing improvements as part of this. The island that I was showing, yes, it is painted. That is a painted island, or it's flush with the pavement, so there's no physical nature there. So in terms of the shoulders, in fact, this screen right here shows it. I'll zoom in here. In this section here, we have 5 foot wide lanes here, shoulders, I should say. So 5 foot is your minimum you need for a bike lane. That's the minimum you need for a dedicated bike lane. So we are not planning on striping any bike lanes here. I know we'd love to do that, and I would love as well as a secretary of the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Board. But 4 feet is we're controlled by the dimension of the curbing. So the plan is not to stripe it as a bike lane because we don't have it throughout. There's certain sections where we have room. The width of those sections we don't have it. So the plan is right now is not to sign it and mark it as a bike lane. However, as a bicyclist myself, you can ride a bike obviously in a 4-foot shoulder. I've done that, and I still do that. But the intent is not to sign it as a bike lane, but it will be available for those to use it as they so choose.
Okay. All right, Ms. Kerrigan, anything further?
No, thank you. I appreciate the presentation.
I mean, I believe you, I would love to have a bike lane here myself as a secretary, but you know, unless we're widening the road, we're not going to get there.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments?
Madam Mayor, this is Lee Gold. I do have one quick question.
Mr. Gold, go ahead.
And through you, I'm not sure who can answer this, but has there, and please forgive my ignorance and my lack of history, I guess, in this, but has there been a study done in terms of the motor vehicle collisions that may or may not increase or decrease based on how the relining has occurred?
Thank you, Mr. Gold. I'm sure this was a key driver to, and pun intended, on why we did this. So, or looking at this. So, I think, Mr. Martin, I think we'll go to you.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Dwayne Martin, Town Engineer. It's kind of an interesting coincidence because one of the reasons why the thought of the road diet on North Main Street came about was because of the high crash rate on the corridor. And so that was one of the objectives, was to consider a road diet to reduce the number of crashes on this corridor. There are certain areas that have spikes of crashes, like the intersection of North Main at Asylum and North Main at Fern. So the design of the road diet should significantly reduce the crashes at those intersections. But I think, to your point, you're concerned about the two-way center left turn lane. Was there a study done? No. There probably are studies out there that talk about that.
Yes.
The two-way center left turn lane is, that it was just shown, is confused, and some people refer to it as a suicide lane, and that's not what this is, although some people kind of think that it could be. The two-way center left turn lane is a safe setup, provided that it's used appropriately. And maybe Joe can elaborate more on this, but what I mean by that is, if it's just simply used for turning movements, it's fine. If people abuse it and they use it as an acceleration or a deceleration lane, that's when you start to run into trouble, and you could have crashes come from that. Admittedly, we don't have this in town. I don't know if Joe can answer where we have it in the region. So it is fairly new. That's why we wanted to advertise it with the display sign in advance of the layout, and then during the layout that we're going to have a new operation here. So safety is a concern, but ironically, that's one of the big reasons why this came about. So if it's okay with you, Madam Mayor, I would ask Joe Balskis to supplement that response.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Mr. Balskis?
Yeah, Dwayne, great summary. So a couple things here. The crash rates were on the corridor are high, as Dwayne mentioned, and you have a 4-lane corridor. You have basically no turn lanes for the most part, and your crash are high. So you are going to, by virtue of putting in 2 through lanes, you are going to reduce your crash rate. So yeah, that is going to happen here with your 2 through lanes. We actually have crash modification factors that we use to predict the reduced amount of crashes that will occur on a corridor. So I don't have those here tonight. I will have those for the public information meeting, but we'll be able to predict, for the most part, based on crash modification factors that Federal Highway put together, that we actually help them with to predict the reduction in crashes you see along the corridor. Number one. Number two, at the Asylum and Fern Road intersection, you're going to have reduction in crashes because your turns, you now have dedicated turn lanes there, and you have dedicated phasing for that. So we're going to see an improvement there. And finally, to the point of the twiddle, the two-way left turn lanes, we're calling it. So where this is being used, it's being used in Connecticut. Actually, I worked on one of the first ones in Connecticut in 1990, back in my early part of my career in Stratford. It was what we do with these mostly is in more commercial areas, more developed areas where you have, as Dwayne mentioned, a high number of turns being used. You have a lot of curb cuts, a lot of driveways, and they're commercial establishments. They're high intense uses. So you see in the Lordship Boulevard in Stratford has been there for 30 years. A lot of crash history there in terms of what we can look at. We also, in Middletown, Route 66 in Middletown, just installed one 4 years ago. And a lot of curb cuts, shopping center area. So we've done that. We've done other road diets as well. They've been used in other areas. And this location is residential. So we're not going to have where you pull out of a development, a driveway, commercial driveway, and you have to accelerate to merge in traffic. That's not going to happen here. You have mostly residential development along here. So we feel that the two-way left turn lane is not, it takes some getting used to initially, But we think in the 6-month trial period, you're not going to see a significant increase in crashes as a result of that. You're going to see a decrease in crashes from the reduced cross section of your roadway and your improvement at intersections. But the two-way left turn lane itself, we have lots of crash history and data to show that it is a safe median treatment for this condition.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vasquez. Mr. Gold, anything further?
No, thank you. I'm all set.
Thank you. Mr. Davidoff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I have two concerns. One was I thought part of this road diet was to do traffic calming and speed calming along that corridor, especially from Asylum until Fern Street. And then my second question is deals with delivery vehicles, because we're not going to be eliminating them. So we're going to see mail trucks, UPS trucks, prime vehicles, oil delivery, other types of delivery vehicles. So how does that interrelate and interact in a scenario when, you know, obviously if you're just making a short-term delivery like a prime delivery compared to, you know, somebody's moving into somewhere, how does that interrelate and affect that that middle, I call it the center lane turn lane.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that all come?
Thank you, Mr. Davidoff. Mr. Vasquez.
Yeah. So the question about traffic calming is a good question, because you have, as you said, the 4 lanes, the higher speed, higher volume. So by going to 2 lanes, you're going to slow traffic down. By going to 2 lanes and having your paved shoulder and having your center median, you're going to slow traffic down. It's not going to feel like a 4-lane expressway through here anymore. It's going to change the character of the road. Yes, it's painted markings. It's not physical it's not physical islands, but it is going to change the demeanor, if you will, the temperature, if you will, in terms of driving. When you're driving on this road, it's going to feel a whole lot different than it is today with 4 lanes. So that's number one. So it will have a traffic calming effect. That it will do whenever you go from 4 lanes to 2 lanes. And with the 4-foot shoulder, 5-foot shoulder, you asked about the delivery trucks. If they're pulled over to make a delivery, it's you're going to go around that vehicle. So where today you have 4 lanes, the vehicle's pulling over is blocking the lane. These vehicles will be able to pull over partially over the 4-foot or 5-foot shoulder, maybe 6 foot in some locations, and then the vehicle will go around the stopped vehicle, use part of the 2-way left turn lane, and then continue on. So it's a safe maneuver around a stopped vehicle. It allows the vehicles to drive slower because there's only 2 lanes. So there will be a traffic calming effect per se. We're not doing physical. We're not doing speed humps. We're not putting neck downs, things like that, that are physical. That obviously will reduce your speeds. But we believe that, and where we've seen other road diets, it will lead to a change in the behavior of the drivers through the corridor.
Thank you, Mr. Vasquez. Anything further, Mr. Davidoff?
And so the 4 feet and 5 feet on both sides, through you, Madam Mayor, would that be the dedicated bike lane as well?
Thank you.
Would we be showing sharrows on the pavement for that or not?
Thank you, Mr. Davidoff. Mr. Vasquez.
So right now it's a 4-foot, the minimum 4 feet. It goes 5 feet some locations, not consistent. So the plan is not to delineate it as a bike lane or sharrows at the current time. We may change that thinking as we go forward and hear a public comment, but bike lanes are usually 4 feet, or I'm sorry, 5 feet in width. So sharrows are not usually used in the shoulder, usually used in the actual lane to encourage sharing of the lane. So the plan is to leave it as a unmarked shoulder, if that makes sense.
Mr. Davidoff, anything further? Thank you, Mr. Vasquez.
All set, thank you.
Thank you. I also want to, for the record, Ms. Faye has joined. I see her. Okay. Anything further from anyone on the council on this rendering? I mean, on this and the next steps, I guess. So can you put back the next step slide again, Mr. Vasquez?
I will try and do it.
If
Yes.
you can't, that's okay. You can just.
I'm getting there. It just, I've used so many different, there you go. How's that? Does that work? Can you see that?
I will. For me, I'm on a delay. I don't know if other people can see it. Yes, it's up.
Yeah, so the next major step is any comments from this committee that we have here as you continue with the process, and then hold the public information meeting. And then from that meeting, then we incorporate comments, address them as necessary, and then finalize the plan for an actual construction plan for a contractor to implement the road diet implementation trial.
Okay, so the public information meeting, is that going to be and maybe is that going to be a large multiple meetings, or is that going to be one meeting, or how is that going to work? How do you envision that?
5 meetings, Dwayne? You said 5? You're on mute.
Mr. Martin?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We were envisioning a public meeting, just one.
Okay.
We could do more if needed, but we were just envisioning one public meeting.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, again, this is not a new concept, nor is it a new pattern of traffic for a lot of the people that have been driving on the road for the past year because of the bridge construction. But it is important. I do think that this is going to be a disappointment to a lot of people that there's not a dedicated bike lane. I think that was one of the goals of this. And our first goal was to reduce speeds and make this road safer and reduce crashes. That was absolutely the primary goal. Many, there's been many crashes on that road, and the average speed has been 40 to 50 miles per hour. So really not a pattern that you want to see on a residential road connecting two major centers. But I mean, was there any thought to making one side a little smaller and having one side a dedicated lane?
So I pulled the slide that I showed you before. This is just a general section of the road, and we're talking about 44 feet or maybe 46 to work with, curb to curb, and that's our constraint. That's our constraint. If the direction is provided that after the public information meeting that the town says, you know what, this is very important, and we think it's necessary, we need to widen, and then we can look at where can we widen. But in terms of shuffling around the dimensions here, there's not much you can work with here. We have 44 feet wide. We have to have a 12-foot wide two-way left turn lane. That's got to be 12 feet. It's usually 14 feet. So we're narrowed that a little bit down, and we have 10-foot lanes. And we all know that. I teach my students all the time. 12 foot's a standard, the gold standard. We go to 11 many locations, but 10 foot. If you have service vehicles and you have trucks are 8.5 feet wide, you're pushing it with a 10-foot lane. So to try and get more inches out of this, there's not much more you can get out of this because you're going curb to curb. So yeah, I mean, could you take your 4 foot and make it an 8 foot lane on one side of the road? That's still not enough to have two-way flow on a bike lane. You need at least 10 feet. So and then what does that become? Then you may want to have a buffer between that two-way multi-use path or lane, as we call it, because now you have two-way on that. So yeah, I certainly appreciate the desire, and myself, I'm part of the bike ped board. So if we are able to do a little bit more with the widening with that, then yeah, we could. But we're beholden to curb width, and that's what we're working with. So I think this is a good compromise. It's not a dedicated bike lane, but I think that avid bicyclists will use it. I'm a bicyclist myself. I ride road bikes and mountain bikes, and 4 foot lane on a road diet, I think is something that will be comfortable for bicyclists, avid bicyclists. If you're not, you will still have the sidewalk to ride on. So, but anyway, yes, there's as much as we can get out of this. I think we've squeezed out of it. I want to get more, but we're limited by the curb to curb width that we're working with.
Okay, thank you. All right. Anything further on this? Any other questions, comments? Okay, so, Mr. Martin?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Wayne Martin, Town Engineer. I just wanted to point out a few things in closing.
Sure.
There still is a benefit to considering the road diet, despite the fact that we would not have bike lanes or traditional with bike lanes. Obviously, the traffic calming would improve safety and slow traffic down, which is one of the goals from the neighborhood along this corridor. Also, pedestrian comfort, or some people felt safety, with all the debris that was, when the vehicles are hitting the utility poles or what have you, getting thrown up on the sidewalk. We heard a lot of people that said that North Main Street's not walkable. You would have a buffer between the edge of travel lane and the sidewalk greater than what we have. So that's another benefit. I did not have an opportunity to forward Matt Hart the concept plans. I will do that so that he can share that with others. I still need to forward them to the Pedestrian and Bicycle Commission as well. Unfortunately, if we do not have bike lanes, this would actually require a complete streets exception, which is kind of counterintuitive. I just want to mention that. I did forward these plans, the concept plans, in an earlier version to the police and fire departments, just to get their response. I haven't heard from them yet.
Okay.
And then I also just wanted to point out the webpage, which we have information on as well. Continue to add information as we go along. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay, I do have another question for Ms. Kerrigan. Ms. Kerrigan?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. With respect to the speed limit, what will the speed limit be? And at one time, there were the point-to-point, travel time. Do we expect there to be a change, either increase or decrease of travel time from point to point with the decrease in the lane? Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Kerrigan. Mr. Bauskas?
Yeah, so great questions, by the way. Very good questions. So in terms of speed limit, so we were not proposing to change the speed limit at the present time. We could look at that, but we weren't proposing to do it because we don't think you're going to need to, because what we did in our analysis in terms of the going from 4 lanes to 2 lanes and the travel time, yes, it's going to take you longer to drive along North Main Street. It's going to. The analysis looked at diverting traffic from North Main Street. We looked at, we're predicting the amount of traffic that may divert from North Main Street to Tropic Drive to Mountain Road. So we're predicting it, and especially now, it's a big prediction now because of the pandemic. There's a lot of unknowns out there for any transportation planner across the country. How do you project traffic going forward at the present time? You don't. It's out of thin air right now. So what we do know from our numbers and some assumptions that we've made for divergent traffic, that yes, we are going to see intersections that are going to have reduced operations. So it's going to take you longer to go through the corridor. Yes, that is a fact. We'll demonstrate that for the public information meeting and represent that as needed. But the travel time through the corridor will be different, will be reduced as a result of the road diet. And by doing that, obviously speeds are going to be reduced as well as a result of it. So that's why we're thinking this is going to be a more active corridor. You'll be more willing to walk on the sidewalks, ride the bike. So that itself will change the character. And the whole question comes down to, is it going to work? And that's what we're going to do as part of the road diet monitoring for the trial.
Thank you. Anything further, Ms. Kerrigan?
No, thank you very much. I appreciate the presentation.
Thank you. I have one other question on signage. You were talking about the I don't want to say around the Twitter, whatever the tweeter thing.
The two-way turn lane, twiddle.
Yeah, twiddle. Okay. In addition, will there be other signage of either, sharing the road, because you aren't actually, to Mr. Davidoff's point, Sharrows might be appropriate in that there's not a dedicated bike lane. It's not just there might be a appropriateness here, or I don't know, but is there any way to?
We'll look at that. We'll look at the Sharrow comment. It's a good comment. We need to look at it a little more, and we'll be prepared for it for the public information meeting.
The other option, obviously, you see in other locations, even if it's not usually if it's painted different, it is a dedicated bike lane. But in some places in, say, Boston, I've seen it not be a dedicated bike lane, but just sort of an alert that this is a shoulder that, bikes are going to go on, whether you think they are or not. I don't know.
We could look at that, Mayor. We could do that.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I guess more information will be coming, and I appreciate all your work on this, and it's a big change to our community, and I do think a major improvement ultimately when it's perfected. So thank you. All right, thank you, Mr. Belskis. If you want to stay, you're welcome to, but if not, I guess you're free to go. I don't know. That's up to your client. Okay. So now to 5C, Mr. Hart, proposal to establish a technical advisory group for affordable housing.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll lead off and then ask Mr. DeMay to add to my comments through you. So as you can see, if you had a chance to take a look at the cover letter tonight, we're recommending that the council authorize the creation of a technical advisory group to advise us both at a staff level, but then ultimately TPZ, the Plan and Zoning Commission, and the council on a whole host of housing related matters. So why is this recommendation in front of you now? Why are we presenting it? A couple main reasons. Number one, I think as we've talked about in the past, the legislature a couple years ago approved legislation that's going to require municipalities across the state to create an affordable housing plan. And we need to do that by the spring of 2020. So, a little more than a year from now. Secondly, our recently adopted Plan of Conservation and Development has a whole chapter dedicated to housing, and talks about the importance of promoting a range of housing types and affordability levels to meet the various needs of our community. And the step you took a month or so ago of approving the accessory dwelling units, the amendments to that ordinance are one part of the equation here. We've listed in the cover memo some of the strategies that are detailed in the Plan of Conservation Development, talking about conducting a townwide housing needs assessment. Really, what do we see as the needs? Looking more critically at our existing zoning ordinances. Where might they need to be modified? What's innovative? What's happening in the region? What's happening around the country that we could bring here to West Hartford to increase the range of housing types and affordability levels? And lastly, but certainly not least, helping to support the efforts of various nonprofit groups or for-profit developers that are working to expand housing choice options in our town. So we think that bringing on this technical advisory group could assist us with a whole variety of those tasks. But number one, starting off with the development of an affordable housing policy that could become the basis of that statutorily required plan. We do, and Mr. DeMay and Ms. Gorski could speak to this as well, we do periodically receive questions from the developers of multifamily housing. What's the town's policy? And we don't have a comprehensive policy in place right now. What's our policy with respect to affordability? The mayor and I have had a chance to talk a little bit about this idea. I've also had a chance to talk about it with the chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission. We think it has merit. It's a concept, it's an idea that other communities in the state have used successfully. So now looking at the composition of the advisory group, who would we look to appoint to this? Staff and I were thinking of roughly 7 to 9 people with expertise in the areas we've listed in the memo here. Expertise in multifamily housing, expertise in affordable housing, supportive housing, for persons with disability, as an example. people who have some expertise in sustainable building principles, land use law, and transit-oriented development, which really would be, I think, a neat connection to another item we have, or at least Mr. DeMay will be talking about later on tonight, our TOD zoning project. So if we were to employ this model, I would appoint the members, actually in my role as town manager, and we would dissolve the advisory group when it's no longer needed. We do have something on the books. I wanted to point to your attention. We've got a housing partnership that was established by ordinance many, many years ago, but that entity has not met in a good long time. So in terms of process, if the committee is comfortable with this idea, we would bring it to the council at your last meeting in February in the form of a resolution seeking your endorsement. And with that resolution, you would essentially direct me and the staff to complete this task. So let me pause there, Mayor, and ask Mr. DeMay to add anything he would like to elaborate upon. And then we can open it up for Q&A.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Mr. Dumais?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Mr. Hart. The only thing I would add to Mr. Hart's comments are this housing task force, it's a strategic framework that I think that utilizing the different areas of expertise outlined in Mr. Hart's memo really does a couple of things, and I think it will also help the town engage our community in a more strategic way to discuss issues around affordable housing and really critically understand the role of local and regional housing market conditions in financing of affordable housing. Those are one of the things that we think that the expertise within the areas identified in the memo will really help us move a housing policy, a holistic housing policy forward for the community.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dumais. And I think that is kind of the reason for this group. It's to allow people that are experts in their field for you, rather than I think this will be a big help. I think this will really give the input that we need to form a policy. I feel, and I do think this is important. It's a question that we have gotten in our from other developers, as you've mentioned. And we did experience a couple of development projects that were unique developments. I think it would have given some more guidance to the developers and an understanding when someone's investing in our community, what the expectations of the community are. So I think this is important. We've got some big potential projects coming our way, in the next couple of year or two. And I think it's time for us to establish a policy so that predictability is there. And I think the benefits of not only the TOD, but also some other developments that might come out that might not be affordable, but housing choice related, whether it be sort of luxury senior kind of models or things like that I have heard a lot about and a strong need for in our community. But I'm sure there's a lot of good information that will come out of this group. So any other questions or comments for? I don't see hands, but please, yeah. Mary, was that you or Beth? Mary? Somebody?
Thank you.
I will call on Miss Kerrigan. I think I heard her. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I unmuted myself. That's as far as I went. I just wanted to share my thoughts for what it's worth. I think it's a great idea. And I'm so happy when I heard individuals who are more needy than others, to have someone representing that group that somehow we forget often. Those of us who are independent, we forget about those. I do think the ADU does a good job with addressing that, but I'm happy. It sounds like the complexion of the group is critical, and I just think that you hit all the key ones. So I think it's a great idea. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Kerrigan. Mr. Hart.
Matt Hart, Town Manager. To the point Councilor Kerrigan added, another element Mr. Dumais and I discussed could be helpful to bring people who are actually tenants and who have that experience, incorporating them as part of the working group as well.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. That's very good idea. Anything further? Mr. Dumais.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Todd Dumais, Town Planner. I heard the ADUs mentioned twice since the meeting started. I just thought it would be an appropriate time to let the council know. Since the adoption of the ordinance, we've had 5 inquiries and issued detailed information to 5 different residents in town. So there's a chance we could have our first ADU application by the end of the month.
Wow, that's terrific. Thank you, Mr. Dumais. That was faster than I thought it would be. Very cool. All right. Anything further from anyone else? All right, so this will be on our agenda for the second meeting in February to authorize the town manager to a resolution approving the town manager's selection of this group. All right, very good. Next is ordinance establishing a procedure for the honorary and historic renaming of public streets. I'll start with you, Mr. Hart, but I think you're going to quickly hand it off. I don't know.
Thank you, Mayor. Matt Hart, Town Manager. I'll start off and then we can turn to Attorney Verano to add to my comments. So Council, you all recently received a request to rename one of our existing streets in Blueback Square. So as we started to evaluate this request at a staff level, we were not able to find really a set process compared to the naming of a new street, which is set out under our zoning regulations. So we thought it was important to establish some guidelines, to have a set of parameters as to how you can handle both the immediate request, but as well as requests coming forward. And this does periodically happen from time to time in any community. So that's the genesis of the ordinance that's in front of you this evening. The Town Plan and Zoning Commission would play a significant role outlined in the draft here in making a recommendation, an ultimate recommendation to the Town Council. So why don't I pause there, Mayor, and through you ask Ms. Verano to touch on the key provisions in the proposed ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Attorney Verano?
Yes, Gina Verano, Deputy Corporation Counsel, through you, Madam Mayor. I'll just spend a few minutes and describe how the application process would work. Basically, any person can submit an application to the Town Plan and Zone Commission to rename a public street. Upon receipt of that application, the town planner would then send a copy of that application to all of the property owners who have frontage on that particular street. TPZ would then hold a public hearing, at which point anyone would have the ability to come in and support or object the renaming of the street. A favorable vote of 2/3 of TPZ would approve the application. If the application is approved, it's then submitted to the town council, where the town council has an opportunity to disapprove the renaming of the street. And that disapproval would be done with a majority vote of the town council. The ordinance goes on to set a few standards too and parameters for the renaming of the street. So for example, the renaming would not be available in honor of a living person, and it can't be used to incorporate in any part the name of an existing street or be phonetically similar to an existing street. The ordinance also sets forth some standards for TPZ, and they're outlined in section C. And 3 of the things that they're going to consider, among many other things that they might consider, is the historic connection and the significance of the proposed name to the town, any objections or concerns raised by the property owners with frontage along the street to be named. At this point, Madam Mayor, I guess I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I thought on an earlier version of this that we had looked at, there was a petition, there would be a petition requirement. Was that not? I mean, maybe I did that.
Through you, Madam Mayor, there may have been a petition requirement. It's lightened a little bit because we went with an application simply to TPZ.
Right, right. Okay. All right, and I want to frame that we do, there may be just one one street request now, but we do believe that a procedural, a procedure would be better than responding to this one street. So I don't know if people have, I think everyone on the council has received recommendations from some students to rename New Street. We wanted to have a process in place that made sense, that we could follow for future recommendations if any come. And maybe there won't, but we just in case. So that's sort of where the impetus for this came from, just in case anyone's curious. Gold.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Through you to Gina, or I'm sorry, Ms. Verano. I think paragraph B speaks about 100 signatures. So
Yes.
One of my questions was 100 picked out of a hat, or was it just something that you've seen in other statutes in other towns? Was there any kind of precedence that you drew that from, number one? And I guess number two, if we are looking to entertain renaming streets, should this be expanded to buildings as well? Because obviously we've heard in the town that people want to change names of certain buildings. Is that something that should be incorporated in this in one fell swoop so that it's all kind of over-inclusive in one area?
Thank you, Mr. Gold. Ms. Breno, and I think that 100 I had seen somewhere else, but now I see it in the other. So that is what I was referring to. So thank you, Mr. Gold. All right, Ms. Breno.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. Councilor Gold, I'm going to take the second question first. So typically building renaming is done through a separate process. So at this point, we'd suggest that if we were going to adopt a process for buildings, we do that separately and apart from this particular ordinance on street naming. And then I'm going to kick the first question, if you wouldn't mind, over to Todd Dumais, through you, Mayor Cantor, as to how we came with the selection of 100 electors as the basis for the application.
Thank you, Ms. Breno. Mr. Dumais?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Todd Dumais, Town Planner. The threshold was selected, I believe, Corporation Counsel Dodge did some research, as did I, and this was considered to be an appropriate threshold, 100 electors signing a petition. And the fact that it was going to a required public hearing, coupled with the fact that everyone on the affected or potentially affected street would receive notice of a hearing and therefore notice of the potential street name, we thought there was a sufficient threshold. Other communities had lower numbers, some had higher. Other communities had a percentage of the street frontage involved on the street that potentially was being renamed. So this was considered to be kind of a middle ground, but coupled with the hearing, thought there would be ample opportunity for impacted properties to voice their support or concern.
Thank you, Mr. Dumais. Mr. Gold?
I guess I do, and through you, Mayor. I guess when you talk about support or concern, maybe you could elaborate on that. What would a property owner on a street be concerned about a name, and what conditions would that property owner be able to object to a new name of a street? It's not like there's an ADU going up in someone's backyard as a neighbor and you want to object to that, which you can't now, but things like that with building. What basis would be the objection?
Thank you, Mr. Gold. Mr. Dumais?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Mr. Gold. I think the objections would be of a practical nature. You can imagine if you own a home or rent a home, there's a lot of paperwork associated with your home that's specifically tied to an address. And there could be a lot of work and effort to officially change your address once a street is renamed. And that is a burden that people might not want to go through. So while it may seem trivial, we thought there should be at least be a process to vet that. Without that duly noticed hearing to the residents or property owners, there could be instances where people were caught completely off guard and they weren't aware and changed their property address information, which could result in mail issues, billing issues, and practical matters like that. that was really the reason we thought it made sense to include this type of a provision in the ordinance.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dumais. Mr. Gold?
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Gold. Any other questions or comments on this process? I'm looking at my text if I don't see your hand. All right. Okay, so the expectation is this will be on our second February meeting as well, set for public hearing?
Yes, Gina Verano, Deputy Corporation Counsel. Madam Mayor, we would expect to introduce it at the second town council meeting, but that will just be received and be referred out and set for a public hearing. Thank you.
Yes, okay, yes. Okay, thank you. All right. Now we will go to staff reports. We don't have any communications. We'll go to staff reports, and I think we start with engineering. Mr. Dumais.
Mayor Matt Hart, Town Manager, Mr. Martin.
Mr. Martin, I'm sorry, Mr. Hello, I knew that.
That's okay. Mr. Dumais will be on shortly. Dwayne Martin,
right.
Town Engineer. I just wanted to give a couple updates on some projects that the Engineering Division has been working on. Of course, I'm available to answer any questions on these or other projects that you may be interested in. The first one is the drainage studies that we've been working on. So technically, there's 3 drainage studies. This is all explained again on our engineering webpage. There was one that was completed back in September 2018. That drainage study was focused on the former Yukon campus area and some of the flooding that occurs up there. During heavy flood events, there's 30 homes that are impacted by flood events. So that was the reason for doing that study, which ended up recommending the replacement of, I believe it's 4 drainage culverts. And so there's information on our webpage regarding that. And then there are 2 drainage studies, which I've discussed before, which are being conducted by CDM Smith. Those occupy about 1/10 of the town's area. The first one was completed in June of 2020. The third one is underway, and we anticipate that being completed this spring. The first one, which was completed, had recommendations and cost estimates. We used that as well as the first study that I just mentioned to pursue grant opportunities. Unfortunately, we were only successful with one of our grant applications, which was actually for the culverts that I mentioned up in the Yukon campus, former Yukon campus area. So we've submitted a grant application for that. It made it through the first hurdle. If it's well received by FEMA, we will hear from them this summer. And then if we continue through the process successfully, we will be awarded a grant at the end of the calendar year. So that grant, it's a FEMA grant, as I mentioned. The acronym is BRIC, B-R-I-C, which is Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities Grant. That grant is 75% funded by FEMA, 25% funded by the town. There's a required town share. The cost for the project in total is $8 million, so the town share would be approximately $2 million. The reason I wanted to mention the funding is that is a request that is in our current or upcoming budget through our capital program, so you'll see that in there. We have additional funding requests in our capital budget for the other drainage studies that are the one that was recently completed and the one that's ongoing, that you'll see as a recurring request in the upcoming budget. So we are also planning, when the third drainage study is done, to have a public information meeting and provide an update more specifically on the findings, like we did for the other CDM Smith drainage report. So that's coming up. Any question on our drainage studies?
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Any questions for Mr. Martin on the drainage studies? I don't see any right now. I'll ask a question on it, because the other grants, the other projects that were not, will they be resubmitted again at other times, or how will you handle future?
Sure. Specifically, the grant that we were applying for was born out of the first CDM Smith study, which was the FEAT area, if you recall, FEAT, for the boundary area that we were focusing on. The reason that one didn't qualify is because it did not have the appropriate cost-benefit ratio, primarily because it was street flooding. There weren't houses predominantly that were getting inundated by floodwater, so it wouldn't qualify again. But we are looking at other grant opportunities, including potentially working collaboratively with the NBC. If we could do that, we would be eligible for other grants as a collaborative grant application with them. So,
Okay.
keeping our fingers crossed.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. Anything further on the? All right, Mr. Martin. Did you have any other projects besides the?
Yes, this one's brief. I just wanted to mention that the engineering division has been making strides on our traffic calming program. What I mean by that is we are hopeful to formalize a traffic calming program. We've done traffic calming in town. We do receive a lot of speeding complaints. The police department and engineering division collectively receive and work our way through those, but oftentimes we do not reach a suitable or satisfactory outcome. And we feel as though the way to balance and manage the residents' expectations with regarding speeding and traffic safety issues is to formalize the program. So my staff has been working on that, and we plan on bringing that forward to you this spring to get feedback and hopefully move forward with this process. We have already interacted with some stakeholders, including police, fire, and public works, specifically regarding speed humps. I know that is a concern, or has been in the past, with them and residents, but speed humps would potentially be a component in our traffic calming program if it warrants and makes sense to the neighborhood. Any
Thank you,
questions?
Mr. Martin.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. I think it's probably the complaint, as you know, that we get most of all is traffic calming, speed control, really. Okay. Any further questions for Mr. Martin? Okay. I think now we go to Ms. Gorski.
Great. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening. So I am going to give a brief update on some business and leasing activity before proceeding to talk about some financial support as well as some initiatives that are going on. Jerida, would you be able to pull up a slide, please? Great. Just confirming that this is visible. Great.
Someone else confirmed, so I'm on a lag. So weird.
Jerida, can you advance a slide, please? Great. So these updates, fan favorite, are some new business and leasing activity as well as businesses that have recently opened. So up in Bishop's Corner, 3 businesses that opened within a similar time period back in the end of the year, around December. F45 Fitness is a new fitness studio that is up and running in the backside of the Big Y Plaza. Overflow, that is a smoothie and juice bar. They are open in the other Eden's Plaza across the street on the backside underneath where Coma is located. Salsa Fresca, they had taken over the former Cadoba space. So excited to have them. A brand new lease that we just learned about is Restore Hyper Wellness and Cryotherapy. So that's a new business that will be opening. Target date is sometime this spring, hopefully around the April month. And so very excited to be able to welcome them. They will be locating next to Orange Theory Fitness. Connecticut Physical Therapy Specialists, they are working to open a space over in the Simon Conover building next to CVS. So that's a newer business opening. Home care assistants, I'm not sure who may have seen this, but recently there was an acquisition of Companions for Living, which is located in Bishop's Corner near the entrance to the Walgreens Plaza. As we understand it, no major changes will be occurring with that business. They will still be open and operational as well as keeping their staff. So excited for some growth there. Moving into the center, a couple of updates. Worst House on, LaSalle Road in the former McLaddens. They are working towards a target opening of hopefully March 19th. Lobster Craft, they are building out their space on Farmington Avenue in the former Bella Gusta space. They're full steam ahead. They also are hoping to have a very early spring opening. A newer business, newer lease signing is in the former Esquire cleaning space on South Main Street. Kung Fu Tea, that's a new bubble tea shop. I'm really excited for them to open. I saw some conceptuals of their space, and it's going to be a huge improvement to that interior lease space. So excited for that. CLA, which is Clifton Larson Allen. So recently Blum Shapiro was acquired. As we understand it as well, no major changes there. They're just under a new parent company. School of Rock, they are locating at 20 Isham. So that is in the entire second floor of the space that is above Prime Healthcare. Very excited to have them get open. They are currently working on building out their space too. It seems like most people are kind of trying to aim for that springtime opening, but they have been very active in our community even prior to signing a lease and finding a space, which took some time. So we appreciate a lot that they've done for our community. Next slide, please. Great, thank you. In Blueback Square, Aria Nail Salon, they had opened towards the end of the year. In the former Ooh La La space, keep in mind Ooh La La had relocated over right near the Cheesecake Factory. Nora Cupcake is back. They have been doing a pop-up in the former Pokemon space on Memorial, building out two other businesses that are currently building out space in Blueback Square, both aiming for that same, end of March, hopefully early April deadline. Place to Be, so that's a new restaurant that is working to build out the space, the former Cook and the Bear space. And then over near the Raymond Road lot is Sola Salon. So that is a co-working hair salon concept, very similar to Salons by JC. They have several locations in the Hertford County area. They're taking a very large space. It's about 10,000 square feet, and that's the former Mobile Rescue, Skeleton Key, as well as Deadbolt spaces. Across the street at the former Petals and Paws, still working with Toro Casita. So that is one of the concepts by Toro Loco. We are ironing out hopefully some site plan approvals, but they're actively working to be able to move forward on that site. Moving over to Park Road, the other of the Toro Loco concepts, Toro Taberna, they opened this week over on the corner of, or in the former Park and Oak space over on Oakwood. Do's and Dies on Park Road. They are a new hair salon. They're opening at 222 Whiting Lane. That is the commercial building that is directly behind the car wash. For reference, Bird Code, they have opened since the last time I spoke with the council. They are getting rave reviews. That is such a fantastic restaurant, as well as the property looks really, really great, and we thank them for their significant investment. Caribe Restaurant, which is in the former Prospect Cafe, they recently opened. Happy to have them open and welcome them to the Park Road neighborhood. A couple more. Zaytunes Mediterranean had recently made an announcement that they will be opening in the former Chalkboard space over in the Epstein Plaza in Elmwood. Keep in mind there was a council amendment that went to the council last year to make this happen, and they finally made an announcement that they will be opening a restaurant in that particular space. In Corbin's Corner, Kazina Mediterranean Eatery. So this is a newer rebranding of the Simple Greek. So by the same owners of the Simple Greek, they have done some minor renovations to the space. It looks really beautiful, and happy to welcome their new concept there, which is quite similar to the old, but a little bit more of a home style and upscale feel. Next slide, please. And last for leasing and business activity, Ulta, which is going into the former Babies R Us space, literally the last property before we hit Newington. They are full steam ahead with their build out, which is excellent. Also recently, Warby Parker opened in the West Farms Mall. So that is typically they've been direct to consumer selling eyeglasses. They've started to open some brick and mortar locations. So that recently opened there. And then 2 last updates over in the design district on New Park Avenue. Citizens Chicken and Donuts is gearing up to open. And so that is a rebrand and a new concept from Hartford Baking Company. And then the last is Aldi, who is working towards a very small expansion, 1,000 square feet, as well as some renovations. And so they're making a pretty significant investment. The West Hartford store, unfortunately, is one of the last to be able to get this rebrand refresh of their newer concepts, but they're very excited, as well as their customers are very excited to make this happen. Next slide, please. Great. And so lastly, on this presentation, I just listed out some recent property sales. So the first one is 1010 Farmington Ave, which sold in November to the Grossman Companies, which is a investment firm out of Quincy, Mass. So that is the Santander Bank location. Interesting enough, they were very excited about West Hartford. They have family that recently moved to West Hartford, so they left the property and they did a direct sale with Santander. So no immediate plans on that property. Santander will stay, but we thank them for their investment. 970 New Britain Avenue, and I should have moved this down a little bit. I apologize. Let me just move down to 920 Farmington Avenue first. So that is the commercial property, it's kitty corner from Raymond Road. So that is the first property near Troutbrook, recently sold in November to Jasco Development. We had heard some news that the new buyers of that particular property anticipate coming in at some point in the hopefully near future with a proposed new development of that site, as well as the abutting site at 924 Farmington Ave. I will just, out of order, touch on 970 New Britain Avenue. So that recently was a sale of the Dunkin' Donuts on New Britain Avenue, which is very, very close to the Hartford line. 261 to 265 Park Road. So that is the building where, and I'm blanking on the hair salon, DeGrasse, excuse me, had been located. So as we understand it, that also is an investment property sale. Although the commercial space is currently out for lease and looking for a commercial tenant, it is a mixed use building and all of the residential units are currently filled. 702 Oakwood Avenue. So that property has been on the market the entirety of me being in West Hartford. So really excited to see that sell. West Hartford Landscaping, who had been leasing space across the street at 705 Oakwood Ave, finally were able to purchase their own property. They relocated across the street, and this is a much larger space for them. So that is really outstanding news. And then 540 New Park, a big announcement went out this week regarding the sale of their property, or the property at Acme Auto, and the West Hartford Housing Authority's new project that will be breaking ground soon. The West Hartford Housing Authority was luckily able to obtain all of their financing, and it will be full steam ahead for 540 New Park, which is their mixed-use project on the corner of Oakwood and New Park. We're very excited for that. And then lastly, 83 South Street recently sold. So that is the former VFW. We don't have any details in terms of what's next there, but certainly as we figure that out and understand any sort of future plans, we will keep the committee apprised.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gorski.
You're welcome. Any questions through you, Madam Mayor? Any questions on any business activity or before I move on to a couple initiatives?
Exactly what I was going to ask. Any questions for Ms. Gorski before she gets into some new initiatives? I'm not seeing everybody's face, so please text me if you have a question. Or speak up. Okay, Mr. Davidoff?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Ms. Gorski. Is there any recent news with respect to the former Grant space and the former Mr. Chow space on Park Road?
Thanks, Mr. Davidoff. Ms. Gorski. I think I ask her every time I see her.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Davidoff. So what I will mention is in terms of Mr. Chow, I am in contact with the property owner. So there is some interest in that space. They had said, full disclosure, we had not moved forward with trying to attract a new tenant for quite some time. However, with the new year, they are very interested in hopefully backfilling that space. So I do know that there is active interest in that space based on a conversation I had with them earlier this week. So we will continue to work together to hopefully fill that space. I will mention that Mr. Chow, as we know, they were only open for a very short period of time. They made a significant investment for that restaurant. So we would anticipate, based on the fact that most of the equipment is left behind, likely a next tenant would be a restaurant. And then to answer your last question regarding the former Grant space, no real update on that, unfortunately. So I think that COVID had put their plans on hold, but we don't have any sort of details in terms of when they will move forward. I have not heard that they will not move forward with that location.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Gorski. Mr. Davidoff, anything further?
Yes, and the other two properties are bank related. The former Farmington Bank at the out parcel in Elmwood, as well as the United Bank parcel next to the post office. Any developments?
Thank you, Mr. Davidoff. Ms. Gorski?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Davidoff, I have not heard any activity on those.
Thank you, Ms. Gorski. Anything further, Mr. Davidoff?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Any other questions, Ms. Gorski? All right. Then we will go back to Ms. Gorski. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I want to touch on just some brief updates regarding financial support. So as we all know, towards the end of the year, the newest stimulus package was passed, thankfully. So the PPP program, which was significant, that came back for another round out of that stimulus package, that opened to new applications as a staggered rollout the week of January 11th, first starting opening for community development, corporation banks, and then opening to private lenders. So the last update from a couple days ago that we received from the SBA is Connecticut has surpassed rather the $1 billion mark for loan approvals on the PPP applications. That's out of a total of $284 billion that was put into that pot. I also had learned that nationwide, the amount of money spent out of the $284 billion is around $73 billion. So there is still money left in that. It seems as though it was a slower start in terms of receiving applications. I think that there was some delay on a lot of the bank's ends. So we're starting to see more and more applications moving through and more approvals, which is outstanding. Also, part of that stimulus package is the Shuttered Venues grant, and that is specifically to support any live or recorded entertainment venues. And so if you are someone who qualifies for the Shuttered Venues grant, you are not eligible to apply for the PPP. It's a one or the other. So we are working with, our venues in town, including some museums, to understand this opportunity. That particular grant, which is a grant, which is really great news, it is not a loan. There's no track that you have to take there. It is cash in hand if you're successful. They are aware of that opportunity. However, it has not opened for applications yet. They're doing a variety of different webinars through the SBA as well as the Connecticut Small Business Development Center. I think likely they'll open for applications sometime mid-month, but keep everybody apprised on that. Also, really great is something that came together quite quickly. The Connecticut Restaurant Association, they had gotten a significant donation from DoorDash to be able to open up the Connecticut Restaurant Relief Fund. So they made an announcement last Monday through eBlast that program was opening. The deadline for applications for restaurants to apply for that fund, which would allow a one-time grant of up to $5,000. The deadline is tomorrow. What we had heard was they are literally inundated with applications within the first 24 hours of that being out. They had already received almost 500 applications, and that was without a lot of press. Luckily, I do know that many of our restaurants were able to apply and have applied, and as soon we sent it out to all of our restaurants in town within an hour of learning of the opening of this opportunity. So hopefully that will be helpful, and many of our restaurants will be successful with that. Also, two quick items with the state of Connecticut. The CT CARES grant, which had closed in November, that was a one-time grant of $5,000 to businesses through an application process. That program has been closed out, and we do know many of our businesses were successful with that program. So that was excellent, and that was implemented through DECD, through CARES grant funding. And then also another track through DECD in combination with Department of Revenue Services. They had small business grants anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000, which were literally check in the mail to eligible businesses. Eligible businesses were in the hardest hit industries, so restaurants, retail, entertainment, hospitality, and DECD worked directly with DRS to go through a variety of different eligibility criteria to understand who was hardest hit based on some of their comps and some of their previous numbers that they had in reporting. There were approximately 2,000 businesses that ended up statewide that ended up receiving grants. The average check was $15,000. So we do have some businesses that received that, which is great, but we don't know, all of that information. And then lastly, a new opportunity that came across recently is the Women's Business Development Council. They are offering grants of up to $10,000, and these are one-time grants to be able to help women and or minority-owned businesses to help sustain them throughout the pandemic. And this is very different from some of the other grant opportunities where it is to be able to help them implement certain items that might help them grow throughout the pandemic, maybe, pivot or transition, a component of their business throughout the pandemic. So not eligible for payroll, expenses, utilities, or rent, but really items that are going to help improve the longevity and ability, continuity of the business throughout COVID. So we sent that to our businesses earlier this week. And then the last item that I'd like to touch upon is a new initiative that we're very excited to announce, and there's more information to come, but in combination with the West Hartford Chamber of Commerce as well as West Hartford Community Interactive, we are working on an initiative called Why West Hartford. And so we are literally inking the contract with a web developer as we speak. Hopefully can announce that tomorrow. So we had gone through a competitive RFP process of chamber members who offered web design services to find a web developer who could ultimately build a marketing and tourism website. And so this will be, again, a continued effort between the Chamber, the town, and West Hartford Community Interactive. We really see this as a standalone website that will be used to promote the town as a whole. It will be used to attract new residents, to attract new businesses, to promote our tourism and our attractions, to promote all of the reasons why West Hartford is a great place to live, work, and play. We believe that based on discussions with the web developer it should probably take about 8 weeks to build out this website. So looking for hopefully an April launch date of the website. But we really think that this is a missing link to be able to help put us even more on the map than we already are, and to speak to in a very visual and fun way all of the great things that are going on in town.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gorski. Appreciate, and I have seen firsthand the rapid turn on information coming in and then going out to businesses. And I want to thank you for your attention and the urgency, because you understand how critical a lot of these grants are competitive, and also they're really give, I think, the business owners a peace of mind that we're there to help them. And I really, really appreciate all the work that you've done for that. Any further questions for Ms. Gorski?
Mr. Davidoff.
Mr. Davidoff, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gorski. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Gorski, thank you for your informative report this evening and for updating the community with respect to these funding sources that came out. As you know, I think I've been a pretty outspoken critic or critiquer of economic development efforts of the town, and I definitely this evening want to, for the record, commend you on your efforts the past year. It's been a challenging environment to do a lot of these things, but you definitely have been very proactive with respect to the PPP, the PUAs, things for our nonprofits, having seminars, having experts on how to apply. That was very helpful. And I think if one can just recall, last February when this committee met again, I think I made the statement that no matter who you are, you always need to promote yourself and be out there. And not everyone knows that, but there's different ways to be out there, whether it be travel, conventions, or whatever, and through the website. And so the last thing you just mentioned about this development in conjunction with the Chamber and West Hartford Community Interactive, I believe is a missing piece that will definitely provide huge dividends for our community going forward. When a community as great as ours, okay, is out there promoting ourselves, it will attract people to invest and to reinvest in our community. And we can just do so much as the council. You can do just so much as staff, but we can never ever stop promoting our community and telling everyone else all our good stories. And we have many, many good stories to tell. So thank you for that missing piece, for bringing that to fruition. I'll be excited tomorrow to read more about it and look forward to the entire rollout here. But I think learning about that tonight was probably one of the highlights of tonight's meeting. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davidoff. And I know Mr. Gold also was feeling this. This has been something on a lot of our radar. But I do have a question. I'll go to Mr. Gold in a minute if you have any comments. Ms. Kerrigan?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Gorski, I just wanted to say thank you. Listening to this presentation, if we weren't in the middle of a pandemic, you wouldn't know. It's just so impressive. I appreciate, your leadership in terms of keeping our businesses filled, attracting them, hand-holding them, all the outreach you do, all the informing that you do. I just want to say thank you, because it really shows. And I got to tell you, I looked, it's like, oh my God, like we're in the middle of a pandemic and this is what's happening. So thank you. Your hard work helps everyone in this community, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Kerrigan. And this is where you go, Ms. Gorski. Oh, it's nothing.
I was going to say, please don't make me like blush, which I already am, but.
No, she's really been a star. Thank you. All right. Mr. Gold, anything on the, did you have?
Yeah, very, very briefly. And again, Ms. Gorski, thank you very much for everything you're doing. I remember when Leon kind of commissioned me way back when that this was something that we needed to do to promote West Hartford through social media and such. And I know Matt took a hold of that and started running with it. So I really appreciate seeing how this has developed. And I hope that it will continue to attract more people, as I'm seeing a lot of people from New York just piling money into West Hartford and buying buildings up and down Farmington Avenue and around the area, even some that you haven't mentioned that I'm aware of, which I can't necessarily speak about. But it's great to see, and I appreciate you being on top of it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Gold. Thank you. All right. And I think we have Mr. Dumais needs to, would like to give a report.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, Todd Dumais, Town Planner. I'm going to pour some cold water on all of that discussion and talk briefly about flooding. I give a brief presentation with it, and we do it with our Planning Commission every year, and it's regarding our CRS update. And this is an annual recertification process. The town participates in something called the Community Rating System. Obviously, every year, flooding can cause hundreds of millions of dollars of damage to homes and businesses around the country. We experience that, unfortunately, locally here in West Hartford, and are immune to flooding effects and flood losses. To address this coverage gap, flood insurance policies typically don't cover flood losses, standard homeowner policy or commercial property insurance. So FEMA developed a program that's administered through the National Flood Insurance Program that offers reasonably priced flood insurance to all properties in communities that comply with very basic minimum floodplain management standards. That program is called the CRS program, and the town of West Hartford participates in that program. And communities that participate are rated if you go above and beyond the minimum standards to participate. And that can help towards lowering or discounting property owners or business owners' flood insurance premiums. And those discounts range from 5 up to 45% based on the points that FEMA credits and awards the community. West Hartford is a Class 8 community. We're one of only 7 in the state to achieve that rating. And there's only about 19 municipalities that are even rated in the program at all. So that's something that I think our community should be aware of, in that, you know, if you are one of those several hundred properties in town that are required to carry flood insurance, you receive a 10% discount in your premium because of the town's flood management program. Some of the other benefits to the town for our participation in this program are that residents and property owners have increased opportunity to learn about risk, evaluate their individual vulnerabilities, and take action to protect themselves as well as their homes and businesses. We do this in a number of ways: through communication, direct mailing to affected property owners, to lenders, notifying them of flood risks, insurance programs, and ways to reduce flood risks. We also send these to real estate agents and insurers in the community. In addition, the town's floodplain management activities provide enhanced public safety, reduced damage to property and public infrastructure, and ultimately avoidance, hopefully, to economic disruption and loss. So I just wanted to provide that brief update and message around the town's good efforts around our community rating system program. I'll pause there if there's any specific questions on that flood program. If not, I have 2 other brief items to update the council on.
Thank you, Mr. Dumais. Any questions regarding this item? Thank you for your good work. Okay, we don't see any. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The next item is a brief update. You'll recall the council passed a TOD-related moratorium back at the end of November. It's a 9-month moratorium that directs the town to do some work around transit-oriented development, both community outreach and zoning. We're starting that process. We have some research and data collection that are underway, and we're coming to a final decision on selecting a consultant to help with some of our community engagement. We should have that in place and that consultant on board this month. And this month you'll see a project website and also a online survey that will be distributed to the community and the important businesses and stakeholders, and then begin our initial outreach and engagement, including kind of a working group formation. And then obviously we'll engage the council early on in that process, but I wanted to give everyone an update. We're keenly aware of that 9-month clock, and we're about 2 months into it. So we think we can still accomplish that goal that you provided us a little extra time. I think, Mayor, you advocated for 9 months when others asked for 6. One other update regarding outdoor dining. shortly you'll be receiving a memorandum that comes from my office, and it's going to be a review of all of our outdoor dining ordinance related regulations for the council to review. And it's really supposed to outline any ordinances we have on the books, and then more specifically and usefully try to compare the way we approached outdoor dining in the pre-COVID regulatory framework with how we did it during COVID, to compare and contrast the two ways we approached outdoor dining. And we're looking to seek some feedback to see if there's a desire to carry forward certain elements of that COVID-related outdoor dining, such as streeteries. I didn't come up with that term, but I really like it. The streeteries are essentially what we had on LaSalle Road and Farmington Avenue, outdoor dining seating located in space that was previously dedicated to vehicles. If it's the desire of the council, it's the intention of staff to prepare a number of options for amendments, mostly in our zoning ordinances, but also in a couple other area of our town ordinances that we would need to amend to kind of permit that more permanent or a change of outdoor dining operation going into the future. So that will come shortly. I think we staff and Mr. Hart were looking for some feedback. If there's a general desire to carry forward, certain elements like dining offsite in the streets, and that's something the council would like to see brought back to them in an ordinance format. We were hoping not to wait for the next one of these meetings to actually advance that discussion. I pause there to see if there's any, feedback on bringing something back sooner rather than waiting to the next CPED meeting.
I would definitely bring back something sooner. I think our community is anxious to see the creativity that we did and how we're going to carry it forward. So I would urge you to move on those things and get them to us, and we can for a review so we can keep going. I am concerned about the clock and making sure that our businesses, especially our restaurants that have probably are experiencing really challenging winter after a very challenging year, but a great summer, that they continue to be able to operate. Hopefully the state will be able to extend, and that has been, I think the state is pretty committed to doing that, but I'm not sure how they will with the executive orders are expired. Hopefully they will. I think the Restaurant Association will be very supportive of having them continue at least through the summer, similar approvals. So, but I would say go for it. But Mr. Hart, do you want to comment on that?
Matt Hart, Town Manager, certainly concur, Mayor, and as Mr. Dumais explained, staff has done a lot of work already identifying the needed changes and the options. And the mayor and I were recently on the bi-monthly call that the governor and lieutenant governor hold for municipalities across the state. We did ask about the status of outdoor dining. The response we received is that the state is likely to extend it, but we don't want to just bank on that alone. So we will bring you the recommended changes to our regulations. We're going to bring them straight to the council for your review and action.
Thank you. And if you do want to have a special meeting for some reason, feel free. But I think I think we've all had enough experience with outdoor dining and configurations that we can just go for it. So, all right. Anything further, Mr. Dumais?
Madam Mayor, just one last brief staffing update in the Planning Division. I'd like to announce, and I'm very pleased to announce, that Brian Pudlick, our longtime, since 2008, zoning enforcement officer, is transitioning into a new role as associate planner. He brings obviously a broad knowledge and experience in zoning, development review, and site inspections, and excellent customer service. And I'm looking forward to seeing him grow into that new role and continuing to serve our community.
Terrific. That's great news. Congratulations, Brian. That's terrific. All right. Any questions for Mr. Dumais? All right. Mr. McLouchy, do you want to?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Tim McLouchy, building official. Good evening, everyone. Just numbers in the building inspection division to add into my colleague Kristen's presentation, and looking at the numbers that I'm about to give you. If you didn't listen to the outside world, you wouldn't know we're in the middle of a pandemic. For the month of January, the Building Inspection Division took in 445 building permits, which is actually higher by 50 permits than last year at this time. And again, to go off the list, several of the projects that Kristen had in her presentation are in different stages of the Building Inspection Division process. All these is in the plan review. That should be coming soon. We had the big news on 540 New Park Ave. Alta, I was in Alta Beauty today and was impressed. I hadn't been in an Alta Beauty before. They're putting the floor in and about to bring the racking and lighting in, so that's getting there. And Citizens Chicken and Donuts was another spot I went to today, and we did the CO today, so hopefully they'll be opening up possibly tomorrow or Saturday. So the permits, again, 445. A lot of the inspections that we're doing nowadays are remote videos, and we did 494 remote videos in the month of January, which comes out to be about 21 a day. So we're doing the inspections. We're at a 15.6% not pass rate. I don't like to say failure. I like to say not pass rate for our video inspections, which the guidelines we have in place are really helpful with the contractor on site. So on a normal non-pandemic on-site inspections, we're at 17% for a not pass rate. So we're a little lower on the percentage rate of not pass rate for video inspections. So the program's going well. Our outdoor service window, although it gets a lot of jokes, is doing pretty well. We were able to put a roof over it and see what we can do with that. So we're doing that. Phone calls, 3,600 phone calls through the Building Inspection Division this month. We average 3,500 to 4,000. So that's about 40,000 phone calls a year. And we have one staff assistant, Jennifer Assadal, is doing a great job handling all of the inspections for us as we move forward. So we're doing outside only inspections, and we're doing non-occupied buildings. So we're moving along with that. The numbers are surprising because we are down. We're down as far as valuation for projects. However, the numbers of the permits are up. So what we're seeing is action on the commercial, but we're also seeing the residential activity is moving. Now, the valuation or the construction valuation isn't what it was, but we're seeing a lot of people, since they're staying close to their homes or in their homes, they're doing a lot of work on their homes. So we're seeing a lot of residential activity, and that's kind of the basis that we see is a lot of residential, but we're starting to see the commercial pick up. And what we're seeing is we're still at about 8 to 12 days for turnaround time. We try to move the projects as fast as we can through our office for the plan review. We were able to make up quite a bit of time. Thank you to Mr. Hart for the assistance with the temporary help there for a while. We were following a little behind. So we're looking to that. Again, a note on the window. We take 20 to 60 permits a day through that service window, and also other divisions utilize the window. Even on the stormy snow day, we had 5 customers. So that was kind of a surprise. So that's working out pretty well, and things are moving along pretty good. City View is the contract has been executed. We're laying the foundation for that. We're in the process of implementation, and again, it's a little bit because we want to make sure we get it 100%. It's going to be online scheduling. It's going to be it's going to have a lot of things that we want to make sure we set in place. So I'm excited about that. That should be in place. Might take a little longer than we initially thought, but we're hoping to get that ready to go. So things are good. And if anybody has any questions, Madam Mayor, I'm ready.
Thank you, Mr. McLucky. That was a lot of information.
Yeah.
It's been busy, no question. And actually, somebody I heard said they were standing outside and they go, "Are they doing vaccines there?" Because there was a line. Anyway, okay. Any questions? Again, thank you for your work, and we're happy to have your report, and keep up the good work.
Thanks, Madam Mayor.
All right, we'll end with you, Mr. Hart.
Thank you, Mayor. Matt Hart, Town Manager. I'd like to thank the staff team for their excellent reports this evening, and more importantly, their great work throughout the course of the pandemic. Mayor, you talked about at the beginning how the committee hasn't met in roughly a year, and I think you'll you will see during the course of the reports this evening, as well as the agenda items, we've really made excellent progress on our collective strategic priorities. You know, just to mention a few in community and economic development alone. The ADU ordinance, you know, we can check that item off the list. You know, you've approved that. Affordable housing, we talked tonight about establishing the technical advisory group to assist in the development of our affordable housing policy. That'll be a great initiative for us. Mr. DeMay talked about where we stand with the TOD zoning for the new park corridor. You know, that's moving forward, as well as the road diet for North Main Street. Outdoor dining and retail, we want to capture the success that we had in 2020. We think what we were able to provide here in West Hartford in partnership with our restaurateurs and other retailers was an experience probably unparalleled in the state of Connecticut, and we want to keep that going. Mr. McLochie talked about where we stand on the permitting software. That's going to make things much more efficient and effective over time. Mr. Martin talked about where we stand on the stormwater study. Major initiative for the town, going to play out probably over a couple of decades, but you know, we've finally gaining real serious traction on that. And last but certainly not least, Ms. Gorski talked about the Why West Hartford initiative, which several of you brought forward to the fore, and making good progress in that regard. So again, a big thanks to the team, a big thanks to the committee for your ideas, for your leadership, and we're making very good progress, and we're going to keep the ball rolling here. That completes my report. I think it also touches on some future agenda items, Mayor. Happy to take any quick questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Hart, and that's a wonderful way to close, is with the full circle of a lot of initiatives that started and during a challenging year that we've been able to accomplish some of these things. So very proud of everybody and very thankful for all of your work. I know it's not been easy, so thank you, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Hart? Comments, questions? I don't see any. My husband's breathing down my neck. Dinner's ready. All right. Okay. With that, we will we'll close this meeting. We will look forward to seeing to creative, dining initiatives, and look forward to to future meetings. Thanks so much. Good night, everybody.